Hi, and welcome back to Continual Fandom. Tonight we're talking all about jumping into our DeLoreans and driving them straight into TARDISes. We're here to talk about our favorite bad time travel films. I'm your host, Jim Nettles. And before we start strapping on and strapping into all sorts of travel across time, space, and any continuum in between, let's find out who has joined this particular party and see who'll survive till the end. So, Jeannie, you're up first.
Oh, that Adams thing always gets me. Hi, everybody. I'm Jeanne Adams. I write paranormal romantic suspense, urban fantasy, and space adventure with my friend Nancy Northcott. And I love time travel story.
Samantha?
Hi, I'm Samantha Bryant. I write the menopausal superhero series. And when my novels are frustrating me, I write short form horror. And I am also a big fan of all things time travel, though I haven't written any yet, starting with Mr. Peabody and Sherman and the Wayback Machine.
Doc?
Hi, I'm Doc Coleman. I write steampunk comedy adventure, like the examples that you see behind me here. And I've been a long time lover of time travel stories. Although I've only written one so far, because if I'm going to write a time travel story, I want to get it right. So I'm very careful about what I'm doing.
Bill?
Hey, I'm Bill Mulligan, and I can actually join the crew with finally holding in my hands my first published novel, Rom, from Falstaff Books. Yes, a big box arrived this week. Yes. This weekend at RavenCon, we'll do the launch party, and super happy. Thanks to all of you, for a number of you especially, who were so encouraging on the way, all the panels that you've done talking about how to be a writer. Thank you so much. And I love time travel. I loved comic books back in the day, and it was such an easy crutch for them to use, time travel. So yeah.
Fraser?
Hi, I'm Fraser Sherman. I write historical fantasy, also film reference books, including Now and Then We Time Travel, available on Amazon and other platforms, covering extensively TV and movies about, yes, time travel. I think part of the appeal for me as a reader is that sometimes a lot of time travel stories will go into really weird reality warping stuff. And even though that often doesn't make sense, it is quite entertaining. And it's definitely what got me hooked on them when I was a kid.
And Ian?
Hey, I'm Ian Randal Strock. I'm the editor and publisher of Fantastic Books. Come find us on the web at fantasticbooks.biz. But I'm also a writer. I think of myself as a science fiction writer, though the vast majority of my published words have been nonfiction. But for my fiction, without really meaning to, about half of my published fiction has dealt with time travel.
Cool.
So tonight, time travel is one of those things that you either love or hate, or sometimes both at the exact same time. Sometimes it leads to really fun paradoxes, twists, and turns through the continuum, and other times it just leads to lazy writing and bad special effects. So, Jeannie, how did you get your introduction into the idea of time travel, and what is it for you that makes you love the genre?
Well, y'all are all going to laugh because I grew up in a town with a very old library, with a very old collection of books. And my dad was yeah, exactly. They were stuck in time. When my father came to be the director of libraries, then we began to acquire some new things, but that took a few years. And my first introduction to time travel was a very fat, very dusty old version of H.G. Wells's The Time Machine. And I loved it. All the possibilities that you could possibly think of. Wait, what if you could go back and prevent? And of course, Wells didn't do that. My imagination, though, was like, oh, but what if you could? What if? Oh, well, then. So I've loved it in all its iterations as a reader and a viewer. So what was the second part of that question?
We'll have to go back and find out.
Okay.
Samantha, how about you? What is it that brings you to the love of time travel?
Well, I love travel in general. Like, part of why I read in the first place is because I want to have all the experiences, do all the things, go all the places. And it's unlikely that I will get to do all of those things. And time travel just opens up that many more places that you could go back to another point in time, not just to another physical place. And, I already credited Mr. Sherman and Peabody with my introduction to the concept. I'm pretty sure that's the thing I would have liked when I was the youngest that went with it. But I've always loved those little peeks into what it might have been like to live in another era.
Doc?
Well, I definitely have to second Mr. Sherman and Peabody, or Sherman and Mr. Peabody, and the Wayback Machine as my earliest introduction to time travel, but it's also a subject that has come up a lot of times when I've been reading science fiction in my formative years, that because of relativistic physics, it takes so freaking long to get anywhere. You basically need a time machine to make it worth the trip. And it's like, well, if you've got a time machine, you just need to set it for the moment you want to arrive, and you're already taking a shortcut through the universe, so why not cut out all that travel time as well? But it's always been one of the things that fascinates me, whether it's taking the shortcut to get to Alpha Centauri, or going back 5 minutes and trying to have a do-over for something you've just screwed up. And while a lot of people are really fascinated with the idea of going back in time to see historical events, I also like the idea of skipping forward in time to see how things turn out. So I'm an all-round enthusiast for going places and seeing things as they were and as they will be.
Bill, how about you?
I think my earliest memory, my dad was not a big science fiction fan, but he did love Ray Bradbury, which, if you're going to make an exception, that's a good one to make. And he would describe stories to me from Illustrated Man and some Golden Apples of the Sun and everything before I was really capable of reading them. And I think in one way they kind of forced me to become a better reader, because I wanted to read these stories. And I fell in love with The Sound of Thunder. I mean, The Sound of Thunder was just, it had everything a little boy would want. Dinosaurs, time travel, a bleak ending. It was the 60s. So it's still probably my favorite time travel concept of all time. It's also my least favorite because they made it into a movie and they could not have done a worse job. It's like if they went out there with the goal to take a really great short story and make a really bad movie. Mission accomplished.
Fraser.
My first time travel is the answer. First episode of Dalek Invasion of Earth, one of the first Doctor Who Doctor serials. Immediately hooked, still watching Doctor Who years later, and both old and new. I think the appeal of time travel is partly it's not really one thing, it's 100 things. You can have the time tourism, see a modern man amidst the wonders of ancient Egypt. You can have love across time, where you've fallen in love with someone in the 15th century, or you're going back in time to try to get the girl who turned you down because somebody else broke her heart. You can have the time war as two sides try to change the future and get it their way. People coming back from the future to kill Hitler in the present. This usually shocks people because nobody thinks they're Hitler. And so there's a huge array of options and alternatives, and it just has tremendous potential. So there's no end of fun in the genre. A lot of boring stuff, too.
Ian?
My first introduction was probably Star Trek reruns, but I'm not really sure because nobody else in my family likes science fiction. So I'm not entirely sure how it all came into my life. But after that was the horrible depression when I realized that Star Trek was fiction and I couldn't actually do that. I need time travel in order to get to the era in which that happens. And that's, in addition to setting right what once went wrong, my view of science fiction has always been at the more optimistic end where things are going to get better. And I want to be part of that betterness. So, yeah, I want to travel to the future and the cool stuff that's to come, as opposed to the post-apocalyptic horrors that so many of my fellows seem to be writing and reading about these days.
So when we look and talk about the genre, okay, we're getting a little bit of slap back, but when we talk about the genre and the idea of the genre and stepping into it, I mean, the first real movie I remember seeing that locked me into it was The Time Machine, right? The old 60s version from The Time Machine, and still one of my favorites to this day is Evil Dead. The third Evil Dead film where you get to go back in time and have all of the fun. For you, Samantha, if you looked at all the different time travel movies and stories, for good, for bad, for ugly, what is your guilty pleasure? What's that favorite that for you just sets, this is what a time travel movie ought to be?
Well, if we're going for guilty pleasure, it's, there would be one that doesn't hold up that well if you think too hard, right? It's better to just kind of accept it and move on. And I'm very fond of Somewhere in Time, where basically we've got what Fraser was talking about, the love across time kind of story. And Christopher Reeve basically sees a picture and wills himself into the past with no machinery or magic that is explained or anything, to go and find out more about this woman and see if he could get her to love him back. And I saw the movie the first time when I was probably still a child. And I've watched it many times since. And then recently I read the book, which of course is better. But normally I don't have a lot of patience with stuff that is just pretty obviously plot holy like that, where there's no good reason for the stuff to happen. But I guess I bought into all the romance of it. I liked it quite a bit.
It was the 70s. Doc, what about you? What's that favorite guilty pleasure in time travel?
Because you said guilty pleasure, I'm going to have to go with the Adam Project. With Ryan Reynolds going back to save himself as a young boy from the people who are trying to use the time machine technology to control their flow of history. I would not say that it is the best time travel story ever, but I like a lot of the things that it did on the character level, because they tried so hard. They have the characters trying so hard to avoid cross-time contamination, and that just made the kid more curious and made him pick at it until he figured things out. I like the characters. I like the portrayals. I tend to gloss over some of the more egregious holes in it because it's a fun movie.
How about you, Bill? What's that favorite?
I think my favorite guilty pleasure conceit is the whole idea of the Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's Court, because I've always found that absolutely ludicrous, because I think I'm above average intelligence, pretty well read, got a good education. But if I was sent back in time, I am not inventing the TV set or the motorcycle or really much of anything. I think I could probably dope out a safety pin if you gave me enough time, and that would be an accomplishment, but that's about it. There's no way. All this stuff is made for me. I don't know how to make any of that stuff. I know what it looks like. I could draw them a nice picture. The one thing I could do, and what they have is these people go back in time and they create civilizations. Yeah, without even having an instruction manual. No, never going to happen. But I realized I would be the greatest doctor on the face of the earth, because knowing very little about anatomy, I'd still wash my hands. And that right there makes me a better doctor than everyone else practicing in the field.
Fraser?
I think I will pick this as actually an alternate, jumping between alternate timelines movie, but I count that. Quest for Love, early 70s. Physicist accidentally throws himself into an alternate timeline where his counterpart is a brilliant playwright married to Joan Collins. Good, because God, she was gorgeous. But he's also an abusive shit. Excuse me, I hope that didn't violate the rules. And when he tries to convince her that, no, I'm different, I've changed, I'm not the same person, she assumes it's more gaslighting. And can he win her over? And finally he does. And then she dies. And then he comes back to this world to find her counterpart. And the thing is, and this happens a lot, it's the exact same actress as a person I met in 500 AD. So she'll be just the same person. No, this is a completely different person. She has lived a completely different life from the woman he fell in love with over there. But it's so romantic, and Joan Collins is so gorgeous. This is the one time I will give them a pass on it. Also, the handling of the alternate history was really clever. So it works for me.
Ian?
I was going to say that since I work in science fiction, none of it is a guilty pleasure because I can say it's part of my job. I mean, I love Back to the Future, not only for the time travel, but for the fact that they actually paid attention to changes that were made in the past and they echoed through to the present, thus the Lone Pine Mall. But I guess if I had to go for a guilty pleasure, it's probably something closer to Midnight in Paris. It's again, the fascinating time travel, gorgeous scenery, except I think that he wimped out on the ending by saying, well, no, my own time is the best time to live in. And yeah, okay, sort of. Yeah, I can see that, better plumbing and all, but still, wow, the romanticism.
Jeannie?
Oh gosh, I have a number of guilty pleasures. I'll share Samantha's Somewhere in Time, but Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. If it comes on, I'm in the chair watching it. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if I have other things to do. It doesn't matter if I was supposed to leave the house. I'm watching it. The other one is, oddly enough, because I'm not a huge Tom Cruise fan, but I really like Edge of Tomorrow with Tom Cruise and Emily Blunt. They keep it so fast paced that you don't have really time to ponder whether there are massive plot holes or not. And because they do sort of the Groundhog Day thing, they did it well enough that you don't get bogged down in the Groundhog Day thing. That's always my problem with Groundhog Day. I'm like, just pick up the pace, people. But yeah, Edge of Tomorrow and Bill and Ted are probably my two guilty pleasures that I will never not stop and watch.
For Edge of Tomorrow, I'm the exact opposite of a Tom Cruise fan. Like, if Tom Cruise is in it, I'm unlikely to watch it. So I have not seen it. And my friend Chris always told me that if I'm going to watch a Tom Cruise movie, this is the one to watch because he dies repeatedly.
And Emily Blunt literally shoots him in the head about 6 times. It's wonderful. Yeah. Again, I'm not a Tom Cruise fan either. So even if it wasn't Tom Cruise, though, just the fact that she just so coldly walks up and goes, "You need a reset." Bam!
Yep.
Okay.
And the only way he learns anything is by dying. So
Yes, apparently. So
gruesome.
And another guilty pleasure, but it's one I can't indulge in very often because the conundrums make me insane, is Time Cop. It's just rollicking fun in many respects, but most of the time I can get about, 30 or 45 minutes in, and then the conundrums start to be so much that I'm like, yeah, nope, can't do it, can't watch it.
Oh, and there was also, I neglected to mention, Time Bandits. I don't know if that's guilty. I think that's just really well done. Never mind.
Yes, that's just well done. Yes.
That's just fun.
Another one that I found interesting that is usually is kind of a twist on it is Kate and Leopold. Usually they have, the Connecticut Yankee thing where the modern person is going back. And this one was a 15th century, 16th century, somebody coming forward. And the only problem I ever had with it was the ending, but
yeah, that's one that you have to turn off all egalitarian or feminist ideas to enjoy the ending of.
Yeah, and I don't. So I usually get to about the 9/10 mark and click, off it goes.
Yeah, we're done.
Fraser, you were talking sort of about the shifting time ones. Has one of my favorites there, although it is both uplifting and depressing, is Sliding Doors.
That is a cute one. Yes, I've seen that one.
Yeah.
There's several more like that do the just, what if you turn left, what if you turn right, and follow on from that.
Yeah, that's one of my, I won't say favorites, but it's probably one of the most impactful ones I've ever seen, where it really makes you think, what if you make that different choice?
Yes. Well, I think about that all the time anyway, so.
Yeah. Well, we're all writers, so we do think that way.
The one that just came to mind, I haven't watched recently, so I may have to watch it again to see if I still like it. But I really liked Time After Time.
Oh, that's a good one.
1960s or maybe early 1970s.
And that's the one where H.G. Wells chases Jack the Ripper?
Right.
Yeah, where they put H.G. Wells in as a character chasing Jack the Ripper.
Yep. Yeah. It was Malcolm McDowell.
Yes. Yeah, my father was a big Malcolm McDowell fan, so I saw a lot of his movies. And I think I saw that one like before I was old enough to know who Jack the Ripper was. And we were like watching on TV, and my dad's trying to quickly explain who Jack the Ripper is to me while we're watching. And then I got an unhealthy interest in serial killers, like
it happens.
As you do. About that one is, since they did that movie, H.G. Wells is the time traveler. It's like the default setting in so many stories I've seen, like Lois and Clark. He shows up, he has a time machine. Of course he does.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just credit Mr. Wells' imagination. He didn't have to have a time machine to write one.
H.G. Wells grew up in a time where a man working on his own in his own private laboratory could master all different methods of science and advance them. Of course he's the time traveler.
Or she, where I was 13.
Yes.
He got into enough trouble using the machine that he made sure that nobody else got the technology. No.
So since we're kind of starting to go down this road, or this thread, we're talking tropes, right? So, I mean, there's a ton of tropes that we find around time travel. So, Doc, what is your favorite time travel trope to see? And tell me what the movie is that does it well.
My favorite time travel trope to see. See, the one that I'm thinking of is we've got plenty of time. We've got a time machine. But unfortunately, that's the one that I see most often in Doctor Who episodes. So that's not pointing to a movie. And usually they point to that one to say, no, you can't just skip around. You've got to fix it now. Which is one of my favorite things. I love it when tropes get turned on their own heads. Let's see. Let's cycle back around to me on that. I need to think about this a little bit.
All right, Bill, you're up.
I've got one. I think one of my favorite tropes is the people who use the time machine to go back in time to change something, and it turns out that they create the thing that they were trying to change all along. And the best example is Terminator, where if the Terminator hadn't gone back in time, the guy chasing the Terminator also wouldn't have gone back in time and impregnated Linda Hamilton to give birth to the guy that the Terminator was trying to kill. So you screwed yourself up by messing with the time. I should have just left well enough alone, could have taken over the world, and everything would be fine. So,
except for the fact that in film 2, you wouldn't have had the parts left over from the Terminator that were then used to build the research, which created Skynet.
Exactly. But on the bright side, you also wouldn't have had all the other Terminator movies that have just been crapping all over the legacy. So,
hey, we had 2. There's more?
Oh, God. No, there isn't. Don't even look for them.
Those have been lost to time.
There's 2 good movies.
Yeah.
Fraser, how about you? What's your time travel trope?
I think in time loop movies, in general in time, is the ethics of time travel. If you go back and undo a bad thing that you did, are you off the hook? And this is something I occasionally see them dealing with. A lot of movies will sort of say, okay, now you're clean, no consequence. there is a film called Repeaters, in which a group of people going through a 12-step program, they are stuck on one step and they find themselves reliving the day over and over because they can't get through it. One character decides, fine, nothing changes, so I can kill people. I can rape girls. It'll all be undone tomorrow, so no moral consequence. And the other one, and one of the others is, no, it's worth saving people. Even if you have to do it again tomorrow, doing the right thing matters. And that is probably it has some other good features too, probably the best aspect of the ethics of what they're doing in terms of changing your own life and your own actions that I've seen. So I picked that one.
Ian?
I like it when the filmmakers, the writers, whoever, pay attention and actually understand that this thing they've created, time travel, has certain rules and regulations, and that they continue throughout the entire film, the entire book. Filmmakers don't forget that gravity works just because it becomes inconvenient, but they frequently forget that time travel works when suddenly it doesn't become convenient in the storyline. So that tends to throw me out of the story when they've forgotten that they've got time travel and how it works in this particular film.
Can I offer an example of that? Men in Black 3. You have to physically jump to travel through time, but at the climax, because it's convenient for the plot, Will Smith can just send his mind back into his body 5 minutes earlier to save the day. And no justification for it.
Yep, I was thinking more like Looper. We send people back in time to kill and hide the bodies, but this one's being a bad person. Well, if we cut off his finger in the present, then it's going to remind him that we're chasing him down as his finger disappears from his hand at his then present. What? No.
Yeah.
Jeannie?
Did you say me?
Yes.
Oh,
what is
was in
your
time warp? Sorry. I don't know about a trope, but I think the ones that I have both the best reaction to, and sometimes the worst if they do it wrong, is the ethics thing. One of the things about the TV show Timeless that I found really great in the first season that then fell apart in the second season was the ethics of changing something and also the consequences of changing something. I mean, if you keep the Titanic afloat, the people who inherit the millions and are the high rollers and the robber barons and the steel barons are different. So, what are the consequences of it? And like Spider-Man Homecoming spends a lot of time of what are the ethics of changing things. The Flash does it too. It's what's the ethics of changing things, even if it breaks your heart to leave it as it is. What are the ethics and moral choices you have? That to me is one of the most fun things about playing with time and time travel is those ethical and moral conundrums that you deal with. So it's not so much a trope as it is a thing.
Samantha?
Yeah, I enjoy those ethics takes on things as well. But I think my favorite time travel stories usually focus a little smaller. And this may be why I am attracted to like the love across time ones and that kind of stuff, because it's a smaller story focused on just these two people, across time rather than, worrying too much about the whole universe and what you might have done. And I find it easier to connect and a lot of times the characters are stronger characters in those because the time travel part isn't going to make any sense. So they have to really sell the rest of it, the relationships. And I already mentioned Somewhere in Time. But another one that I really like is the third Back to the Future. I loved that romance between Doc and, Mary something. Anybody remember who she is?
Mary Steenburgen.
Thank you. I was like, Mary with a long last name. But I really bought, their chemistry was great. And after enjoying the other Back to the Future movies, it really made me happy to see Doc finding love. And so I really enjoyed that. But another trope that came to mind was the one where you have the chance to go back just within your own life and undo a bad decision and see what that does.
Peggy Sue Got Married.
That is exactly the one I was thinking of, is Peggy Sue Got Married. But again, that's one I haven't watched in a while, so I can't speak as to whether Samantha today would still think it was a good movie, but I really liked it when I saw it. And, you know, I get asked questions, you know, like that on different author things, just like, if you could go back in time and change something about your life, would you? And I'm like, well, no, because my mistakes got me here the same as my good choices, and I like where I am now. So I'm not going to take a chance on unraveling it just so I wouldn't embarrass myself in 7th grade English that one time. Yeah. But yeah, I think my favorite still, though, is the romance across time. It appeals to me with anybody who's ever felt like a misfit in love, like feeling like, I can't date in this, none of these people are my people, kind of thing. That kind of story, you know, makes you feel like, well, maybe there is somebody out there for you, if only you could cross the right centuries to get to them.
All right, Doc, did you come up with something?
Actually, the one that, hearing everybody else's stories, the one that came to mind very strongly is the butterfly effect. And part of that is because we mentioned the sound of thunder. But it's also that in different things, the butterfly effect has either been incredibly powerful, like Sound of Thunder, or it has been practically negligible. As in all the Doctor Who episodes where it's, you know, it's a wibbly wobbly, timey wimey. Most things tend to sort themselves out. But you also get things where it's like, okay, I went back in time, I tried to be very careful, I made a small change, I come back to the future, everything looks pretty much the same, and then you start noticing, okay, there's subtle differences. It's like, you know, that butterfly is not gonna create a hurricane all by itself. There's a lot of other things that need to be lined up there too. And I actually had another one, and it just slipped away again. Darn. I'll have to go back in time and get it.
So, Bill, I'm gonna start with you on this one. And that's a definite oh.
Yeah, because I don't have time to think.
Not only are there the tropes that we love and the films we've loved, there's the tropes we look at and we hate and we're tired of and can't do ever again. So give me that trope and tell me which film it is that pushed you over the edge.
I loved it when I was a kid, but I hate the time travel trope now, where our heroes inevitably get caught in an unending time loop, and that's how we end the movie, by just running things faster and faster as they go back and forth, and they're stuck in this loop forever. And that movie was called The Time Travelers. I think it came out in 1963, and they remade it 2 years later. They didn't even wait. It's like Marvel with Spider-Man. They just said, oh, we got to make another one. It's been 2 years. And it was actually kind of fun, low budget movie. But yeah, that whole you're stuck in the time loop thing is, it was good for one ending, but it's a very Twilight Zone kind of thing. And once you've seen it a million times.
Literally.
Yeah.
All right, Fraser, how about you? What's the trope you hate?
I think the one that annoys me the most is the identical person across time. Oh, well, like in the Bing Crosby Connecticut Yankee, which was the first movie to use the trope, he falls in love with Wanda Fleming while he is in King Arthur's court, comes back to the present, meets her present-day distant descendant, so, okay, he hasn't really lost her. And, you know, it's not going to be the same person. The worst example, a movie called Forbidden Kingdom, which has Jet Li and Jackie Chan playing second banana to a generic teenage white kid who goes back in time to ancient China and has adventures, falls in love with Chinese young woman. She dies in his arm. He gets back to the present. Oh, he sees her exact double. No need for mourning. She's fine. That's really bad. I mean, the movie does have Jet Li and Jackie Chan, but I do not recommend it.
And how about you?
When the time traveler is so egregiously stupid with this ability that the Time Patrol really ought to show up and put us out of our misery. The first one that comes to mind is the Star Trek reboot, J.J. Abrams' mess, where the Romulan is so grief-stricken that his planet has been destroyed that when he finds himself 117 years in the past, he doesn't set about saving his planet, but rather decides to set up this elaborate revenge plot where he grabs Spock and makes him watch as he destroys Spock's planet.
But wait, he waits 25
years
because he's realized he popped out too early.
Exactly. And he does nothing to save his own planet.
Yes.
He's too stupid to be allowed to live.
Especially since if he'd just gone to Romulus and said, hey, look at my ship. You can build these. They would have taken over the whole quadrant. Yeah.
Or when they say, okay, we've got time travel. Oh, no, we don't really want to bother with time travel. Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban.
Oh, yeah.
She's got the most powerful device in the world, and she uses it to go to multiple classes. Okay, yeah, that's somebody who would. But she doesn't do anything else with it.
Yeah,
right.
Then the author did nothing else with it.
Take extra classes.
And the author did nothing else with it. It was, yeah, we've got it, but we don't care.
Yeah.
No.
Well, that is a problem. Once you accept that time travel exists, you should use it all the time. I love Superman, but once Superman goes back in time and saves Lois Lane, every subsequent movie, whenever he's in a jam, is just go zipping around the Earth, Clark. You did it once. It works.
Yep.
Yeah, they could have at least said it exhausted him so much he could barely make it, or some kind of bullcrap rationale,
Sure.
but they didn't even try.
Or the plate tectonics, the plates got so fragile that if he does it again, the planet will, something.
He'll have blown up 2 planets, and
but that's exactly why in the Flash series, as soon as he goes back in time to save his mom, they show here's the repercussions of that. This is why you don't ever want to do that.
All right, Jeannie, how about you? What is that hated trope?
Well, I'm with Ian. It's like, really, it's like the thing from Meet the Robinsons. I don't think you thought this through. And that's actually one of my favorite time travel movies is Meet the Robinsons. But like Minority Report and War of the Worlds and some of these others with some time travel things with it, it's the irregularity of consequences. This time it's this big horrible thing, and it's going to be the end of the time in the world, and everything is going to explode, and the changes are going to be absolutely disastrous. But not for me. I will be the one who figures it out and is unfazed by these time travel issues. And I guess too, I get really a little bit cranky with it when there's a serious, they're positing a movie as something pretty serious, and then it goes off the rails. One of the reasons I love Bill and Ted is it is absolutely a romp from the very beginning, right? There is no explanation of the time machine and the phone booth and the whole deal and the whole stuffing people in the phone booth. And it's really about history and learning rather than time travel itself. But then you have something absolutely horrible like Hot Tub Time Machine, where it's one of those let's go back and fix our mistakes with our girlfriends kind of deals. And it's frivolous. It's like, oh, there's this power. But like Ian is saying about the Harry Potter, it's like, yeah, but we're not going to use it for anything important. Just dick around with it, right? So I guess I want people to take this seriously.
I'm serious about my time travel.
Yes, absolutely. There must be consequences.
Samantha, how about you?
I had the most time to think, and I still don't have a good answer. I was listening to your answers and thinking, and I'm like, well, I do find it annoying when you've got a story that hasn't otherwise had time travel, and it feels like the writers just wrote themselves into a corner, and the only way they could fix it is with time travel. I felt that way about the last Avengers movie. That we wrote wrote till we put everybody in this really dark place, and then we just time traveled to fix it. And that was disappointing to me that was what we did. And especially since we had Tony just, invented overnight. So that does annoy me. But I'm also with Ian that, if you have something like a time turner and you've established it, it doesn't make sense that it would only be used for these little trivial things when there's so many big sweeping things it could have been used for, especially in the hands of somebody like Hermione, who would see all these possibilities. Hermione I'm surprised with a time turner that Hermione didn't, basically take over the universe herself, because she was the one who knew everything. And, then we could have Dark Hermione, and that could be interesting. Somebody probably somebody send me the fanfic.
Hermione goes bad.
Yeah.
She's got a little goatee.
With the best of intentions, though. She would go mad science bad, not like I set out to be bad.
Well, that's the worst kind of bad, the good intention bad.
Oh, yeah. That's the most fun.
Yeah, I am my own worst evil twin. Wrong series. So, Doc, how about you?
Okay, so the trope that I really kind of hate is the one where you've gone and you've made a change in the timeline and you're going to unwrite your own existence, but you can watch the progress of it and you can try to fix the whole thing before you're wiped out of existence altogether. And of course, one of the classic examples of that is Back to the Future, where he's got this picture of himself and his brother and sister on vacation, and he's watching them slowly disappear over the course of the movie. And it's like, no, you've time traveled. Either you are immune to any kind of changes you make in the past because you've time traveled, or it's going to have, you've screwed up. It's going to happen instantly. You cease to exist. Introduce paradox loops. Here we go again. It's like, no, you don't get to watch the clock ticking.
Yeah, but visually it's much more dramatic that way. So I give them a pass on that one. Silly though, you're absolutely right.
Back to the Future has one of my favorite time paradoxes, though, which is that Marty McFly loves the music of Chuck Berry. And he goes back in time and he plays Chuck Berry, and someone is on the phone talking to Chuck Berry, and he says, Chuck, you got to listen to this. And that's where Chuck Berry got the idea for Chuck Berry music. And then you realize that means that no one actually created that music. Mm-hmm. Where did it come from?
Yep.
Well, and that kind of leads to the next thing I wanted to dive into, which is the paradox of time travel. We talk about, is it going into a multiverse? We're going to have a dimensional split every time you make a different dimension and da-da-da-da. Or we go with the grandfather paradox, where, of course, you can't go back in time and kill your grandfather, or can you? When we look at some of these things like the paradoxes that get thrown in there and the rule breaks and all the other things that we have to twist and say, no, this is the immutable truth until it becomes too inconvenient for the story or the writers. So, Fraser.
Yes.
When we look at just kind of time travel overall, the films overall, what are some examples that again are kind of favorites for you as in terms of the genre, but that kind of play with these paradoxes? Because that really is the heart of so much of the science side of it, is how they treat and look at paradox.
I will go with, I wouldn't say this is one of my top favorites, but while I was working on my time travel movie book, I watched the TV series Continuum, and early on, they have a scene where it's time traveling terrorists have come back to the present to change their what they consider a dystopian future. Time traveling coppers followed them back. In one scene in the first season, somebody grabs the father or the mother of one of the terrorists and threatens to kill them. And then they do kill them and nothing happens, because the grandfather paradox, as somebody was saying, once you're traveling in time, you're out of the causality.
Yep.
Then in the last season, you have one character, he's corrupt, he's amoral, he gets a message from his future self back in the original, well, in the changed timeline, his future self is very rich, very powerful. He wants to come back and tell him everything he has learned how to become even richer and more powerful. What he doesn't mention is that he is very sick and old. He needs organ transplants. Who could be a compatible donor? And with no grandfather paradox, it's going to be his past self. And that's so gloriously ghoulish.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be one that I really enjoyed, the handling of the paradox.
Ian?
As Fraser was talking, I had it at the top of my brain, and as he stopped talking, it just went completely away. Hang on a second, let me check my notes. Yeah, it's not there. Great. Well, I'm stumbling here. I'm sorry. I'm just going to say that I tend to look around the paradoxes a bit. Yeah, I mean, they're multiple movies, multiple methods. Basically, it's the multiple universes theory, except that I don't like that, because where does all this stuff come from to create all of those other universes? So I tend to feel a little more comfortable actually with a lot of the movies where they can work around it by saying, okay, that we're just not going to deal with that concept. I was, About Time and The Time Traveler's Wife. Two movies where they talk absolutely nothing about the mechanics of time travel. They don't know how it happens, and it doesn't really matter. But they pay enough attention to the world within it, which these people can travel in time, so that they are limited, and they adhere to those limits. It was About Time, where he realizes he can't travel back before the birth of his child in order to see his father anymore. So it's limited. And I've gone completely off the topic of that question, hoping no one noticed.
Paradox.
Mm-hmm.
Jeannie, how about you?
Oh, the paradoxes are what make it fun and then make it horrible at the same time. One of the movies I did not like, but I did not like The Time Traveler's Wife. I liked Time After Time, but I didn't like The Time Traveler's Wife because there were too many things that, well, she didn't have enough agency in the movie, so let's just stop there. But the paradoxes for me is what generally throw me out. Is wait, if you're going back in a time when you lived the same time, you are still alive in this time, or you are a child in this time. And I think somebody, and maybe it was you, Doc, mentioned the Adam Project, or maybe you, Fraser.
Yeah.
I liked again, one of the things about that is the snark and the silly is piled about 5 feet deep in that movie. So the mechanics are a little bit lost, but the fun and is still there. But there are a lot of trying to work around the paradoxes. Well, if I tell you this, then you will know, and therefore it'll screw shit up. Well, how will it screw shit up? I don't know, but it will. Yeah. And so they at least give voice to the fact that there could be some issues. And, I go back to, Doc, you actually brought this up as Sound of Thunder. That started me in thinking about paradoxes from the first time I read that story, is what things change things, and does it split off a timeline, and, all those things. So I tend to like the movies that either completely throw it out the window, like Bill and Ted, and just have fun with it, or really focus on how do we keep from screwing up the present and the future. So I don't know. I like the paradoxes.
If I can jump back in, because I remembered the one that I meant to say earlier, which was Quantum Leap.
Oh, yeah.
Where the way they got around it was by having him fix things to make the world that in which we live right now. You don't remember, Sam, but actually Jackie Kennedy died in the first instance also. You saved her, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And the thing that always got me about that with Quantum Leap is I've just recently started a rewatch of it. And you get in the first season, and it's like the first adventure, they thought they were going to do a recall on him, and it didn't work. And then he does something, it changes history, and then he leaps. And from then on, they've got this whole thing about you're leaping from life to life to fix things that went wrong the first time around. It's like, Where did that come from?
Yeah.
I mean, it's the whole idea of you were there, you changed things, and then it was like something grabbed you and moved you. But where did the whole concept of this is what you're supposed to be doing come from? It appeared from the floor of the writer's room.
Well, that's the thing. I loved that show, but the thing that always got me is who gets to decide what's wrong?
Mm-hmm. What they needed was to establish that there was a previous time traveler who went back in time trying to fix things and messed everything up, and Sam is going back to undo everything he did.
And they did try to do that with the evil leaper in the last season, but they didn't go very far with it for good reason.
In response to Jeanette's question, I mean, the stuff he's doing, helping people stay out of asylums, saving lives, it's not like stuff where there is a huge moral question on whether he's doing something good or bad. I mean, which is part of the benefit of sticking to small personal leaps and not going in for changing the big historical stuff.
But of course, it's dangerous to change the big historical stuff. Everybody wants to go back and kill Hitler. And sure, I mean, that sounds good, but Hitler lost. You kill Adolf Hitler and maybe we get Kevin Heydrich or whatever, and he doesn't invade Russia in the winter. It could change the whole point of things.
There is a great
you really got to be careful.
In the 12 Monkeys TV series, which I love, where at one point they realize the bad guys have killed Hitler to change history, and the good guys have to go back and save Hitler, leading to what? Save Hitler? That is not what you do with a time machine.
Samantha, how about you? What's your paradox story?
So someone talked about the Terminator earlier with I went back in time to keep this from happening, and my going back made it happen. And I very much enjoyed that in Terminator, and we saw it again in 12 Monkeys. And I like that. I think the important thing in the story has to move fast enough to not leave you too much time to examine it, though. Because if it's a slow enough film, you're going to think too hard about it. And then, like older Joe said in Looper, you're going to end up building diagrams with straws to explain what the heck is going on.
Doc?
So my take on paradox is that we always have something along the line of the universe has a way of dealing with paradox. The idea that paradox can't just exist, that there has to be a way to resolve it. It assumes the universe is logical. And they the classic example is they use this in Time Cop when they get the younger version and the modern version of the senator together, and they touch and basically cancel each other out. They melt into each other and then dissolve out of the universe. But it's like, why? I would much more likely see a massive energy discharge because you brought people with two different the same object with two different energy potentials, which is one that they use in Doctor Who. But I mean, we've talked about stuff like this ring is an heirloom passed down for generations in my family. I travel back in time and I give it to this general because I recognize his name as an old relative, and that's how it gets introduced. Well, where did the ring come from? It's a paradox. You don't get to resolve it. How did this get into my family? I gave it to my descendant. And even if you stop insisting that there has to be one timeline and that the universe has to make sense, even the grandfather paradox goes away. It's okay. This grandchild only exists in the time loop where he grows up, invents time travel, goes back in time, kills his grandfather, and then gets wiped out of existence. It gives you no information about what happens to the rest of the universe after he goes back in time. And that drives people mad that, well, what happens to the rest of the universe? Because now he's gone out of it. You say, yeah, he's gone.
Yeah.
Who cares? Why is he that important? Because he invented time travel. Yeah, but he used it to wipe himself out.
If we kill Hitler too soon, does it undo the universe?
Yeah. Well, and then there's the other one. You went back and you killed Hitler, and somebody else became Hitler and did exactly the same thing.
Or tell a different story where it turns out we're the only timeline where there is a Hitler because, we're the only one. In all the other ones, he never amounted to anything. Somebody went back in our time and made sure he didn't die from tuberculosis at 12 the way he was supposed to. Just mix it up a little.
My favorite Hitler bit is in the TV show Misfits. There is an episode where old Jew goes back to kill Hitler. He fails. Hitler gets hold of the guy's cell phone and technology takes a huge jump. At the end of it, a time-traveling character goes back, gets the cell phone back, kicks Hitler in the balls, kicks him again, and then looks down. Hitler, oi, why you gotta be such a dick? And then leaves. And, haven't we all wondered that?
I think there was an episode of Love, Death, and Robots that was like 10 different ways to kill Hitler. and each one was a different attempt, and they had different outcomes.
There is a short story, I forget who wrote it, where they take a different approach. Somebody goes back in time with valuable stamps, turns them into money, sets himself up as an art dealer, becomes Hitler's patron, and Hitler's never going to be a good artist, but with the right patron, a mediocre artist can become a success.
Yeah.
By the time the rise of the Nazis rolls around, he is a comfortable bourgeoisie, successful artist, no interest in politics.
Yeah. But then along comes Kevin Hitler, so. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the paradoxes. I do love them in like Terminator and all, but whoever was saying, where does all this stuff come from when you create a new timeline? So my favorite one, and now this is starting to get overused too with the whole multiverse thing. I prefer to think of it that all the various timelines are like streams moving in parallel to each other, though they may not be exactly in sync. So when you're going back in time, you're not going back in the back of your stream. You're jumping to another stream. So you're just jumping to another timeline where that stuff hasn't happened yet. But then that creates the problem. Once you start diverging things, you're sending it all crazy. And that's kind of what the Loki miniseries got into. And it was very clever. Yeah, it was very clever and everything. I just think they made the people in charge just too powerful.
What I love about the way they treat time in Loki is the timeline is not there's a set amount of things in the universe and they move down through a series of events. It's time flows. It's always flowing all times. So if you go back, you change things and it creates new branches, but it's still there. Mm-hmm. You're still there changing it. It's still there without you being changed. It really breaks your noodle, but it's an absolutely brilliant in terms of, the universe is always there. The stream is always flowing. It's just, are you going to dip your toe in it or not?
Well, it sounds like we have gone through and crossed the streams, and we could continue to loop through more tales through time, but I think we'll have to try this again. But before we get out of here, let's make sure everybody knows where to find you guys, what your latest tales of terror, tales of woe, tales of love, tales of science fiction might be to share with the world. So, Jeannie, you're up first.
All right. Well, you can find me at jeanneadams.com. You can find me on most social media as Jeanne Adams. I spend way too much time on the hive of scum and villainy that is the fading Twitterverse. And my latest is a Valentine story in Love and Valentines at Caneham Castle. It's a ghost story.
Samantha.
So hello again, I'm Samantha Bryant, and you can find me and my work at samanthabryant.com with links to all my social media, where I waste a lot of time. I'm working on the 5th and final in the Menopausal Superhero series right now, with hopes of bringing it to readers through Falstaff Books in 2024. And in the meantime, you can check out some short horror. I'll be in the next anthology from Chrome Girls Press. You can read my take on a sort of an urban legend kind of story in the next one in the Coppice and Break series, which I think is called Fen and Tangle.
Doc?
So if you're interested in my work, you can go to your favorite search engine and you can search on Doc Coleman Steampunk, and that will take you to my website at doccoleman.com. It'll also bring up my Amazon author page where you can see what I've already got published, and you can follow me and see when new books are published. And the latest thing that I've got out is actually a short story that's part of an anthology by eSpec Books called A Cast of Crows, which we just launched at the Telltale Steampunk Convention in Hunt Valley, Maryland. But that book isn't going to be officially out until October. So your best bet for finding one between now and October is to come and see me at Balticon Memorial Day weekend, because I will have copies and I will be able to sell them. Or you can go and see where eSpec Books is going to be, because they're going to have copies too.
Bill?
Yay. So this is going to have its launch at RavenCon, and I'll be at Con Carolinas, Dragon Con, Atomicon. Please come and see the panels. They're a lot of fun. And you can also go to BillMulliganBooks.com. Yeah, books. What temerity, what chutzpah, what gall. I got one book, but it's Bill Mulligan Books, plural.com. Yeah, thinking long term.
You've made a promise to your readers. Now you must fulfill it.
Okay.
He said you get a box of them.
I mean,
that's true.
It's better than BillMulliganHasAbook.com.
Yeah.
And Fraser?
You can find me at FraserSherman.com. That's Fraser Sherman, spelled funny. And I also blog at Atomic Junk Shop, and I'm on social media. I put historical fantasy and film reference books. My most recent book was Questionable Minds, a steampunk novel with psionics. And I have a short story out in LOL Craft, the anthology of Lovecraftian humor that came out earlier this year. It's called Happiest Place on Earth. It's what happens when Mickey Mygo discovers the Mickey Mygo Club is being cancelled.
Ian Randal Strock, spelled like that. I'm at ianrandalstrock.com. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, which I don't know how to use. Also, the company is fantasticbooks.biz, because the .com is parked and they want many, many thousands of dollars for it. So screw them. Fantasticbooks.biz. The big thing that's coming soon is Jewish Futures. The anthology should be launching in August, and there will be other books before and after that. And you can find me upcoming at Heliosphere, Balticon, Con Carolinas, and several Mansargis in and amongst all of that.
And I've been your host, Nettles. You can find me at jamespnettles.com, authoressentials.net, authoressentialsworkshops.com, thespeculative-fiction-academy.com, creatingprose.com, and of course here at ConTinual. And I'm happy to say that hopefully the time loop is almost closed now on fairy films. We Folk on the Silver Screen should be out about the time that this hits. So until next time, unless we come up behind you before this one happened, this has been Time Travel, and this has been ConTinual, and we'll see you again soon, or maybe before now.
See you earlier.